I grew up in the countryside and never set foot outside of our town until the age of 20. You see, my sister got married when I was 19 and she had moved to the city not long after the wedding. I missed her a lot after not seeing her for about a year. So one day I decided I was going to pay her a visit and left my town for the first time in my life. When I went to her place, I was so content to see for myself how happy she looked. Her husband, who originates from our town as well, he was a thoughtful and devoted life partner. I couldn't possibly ask for more than that from a brother-in-law. I was really happy for both of them. 3 days passed so quickly. The plan was to stay there for 4 days, so basically I would leave on the 4th night. My sister and I were both really sad, especially because it was just me and her for a while there. We had a painful past. My dad passed away in an accident when he was in the military. I was only 9 years old when we lost him. And my mom, she died from cancer when I was 14 and my sister 18. We wouldn't have made it on our own if not for the strong bond we share as siblings. So yeah, I'm sure all siblings care deeply for one another, but because of the adversities we had to face together, our bond had to be that much stronger for us to continue living, striving, and doing all we could to make the best out of the opportunities at hand. But yeah, on the 3rd night of my stay there, my sister suggested that we should go to an amusement park the next day. She guaranteed that I would love it there, and not to mention it could possibly be my only chance to experience it for the foreseeable future. So I said yes and went to bed that night, all excited for the next day. The next morning, I was finally at the amusement park. And let me tell you, it was all that I had hoped for and then some. It made me feel like I had gone back to being a kid, and that led to lots of thoughts of my parents. But not the sad memories. I only thought of the happy ones. I was having a blast. We were going to finish the day with a ride that was supposed to be scary. You were supposed to ride in a pod that could accommodate 2 people each. The pod was open up top so you could see everything around you, and closed at the bottom, which I'm sure it was designed as such for safety reasons. Anyhow, the pods ran on rails and it was a slow ride. The scare you're supposed to get on that ride was not the speed, but rather the point was to terrify the riders with the lights, animatronics, and the actors who play the parts of some of the monsters and ghosts. We waited on the line and I saw 2 girls in front of me get on board on one of the pods. Next in line was me, and then my sister and her husband would ride on the pod behind mine. The ride began to move, and right away I realized I had aged one too many years to be able to enjoy the ride fully. Still, it was amusing. Lights that resembled those at the clubs were flickering everywhere. There were some crude animatronics jumping out of coffins, walls, and the ground. Then there were the actors who were dressed in costumes, and they came so close to you that they could touch you if that was in the script. The pods moved along the rail, and then there was a stretch of the tunnel where everything got pitch black. I think the point was to scare people by touching them, because I could feel feathery materials rubbing against my arms and chest. I gotta admit, that was a bit creepy for sure. The darkness lasted maybe 7-8 seconds, then the lights began flickering again. That's when I noticed the girls who were in the pod ahead of mine had disappeared. Yeah, they were no longer in their pods. It took a few more bright flickers of light for me to be sure, but the pod was definitely empty. After I was sure what was happening, that's when I began to look behind me and not forward. I had to make sure that my sister was in her seat. I was reassured by the fact that my brother-in-law was with her, but just in case, I was ready to jump out of the pod in case anything happened to her. The ride lasted for only 30 seconds, but those 30 seconds felt more like 30 hours. In time, however, it came to a stop. As I got off at the stop, my sister's pod also arrived. She was safe and sound, and I could finally relax a little. Having established my sister's safety, I ran straight to one of the staffs and let him know of the 2 girls who had disappeared during the ride. The guy seemed to be in on it. He had to be, since he was acting as though there weren't any riders in the pod ahead of mine. He knew there was a lie because there was a long line of people who were waiting to go on that ride. There was absolutely no reason to send an empty pod into the tunnel. And yet he stood there telling a lie with a straight face. A crowd began to form, and even though some people began to look at me like I was crazy, I didn't give up. If those girls were my sisters, and if a stranger was in my position, I wouldn't want that person to give up on my sisters either. So you know what? I could care less what people thought of me at the time. My sister was sure confused, and she kept asking me what was happening. I simply told her that I would explain things to her later. I didn't have any time to waste. A couple more staff members came over and I demanded they turn off the ride. You see, the ride was designed to move continuously. You get off the ride as it slows down back at the starting point and not when it comes to a stop, because it never does come to a stop. When the staff members refused to listen to me, I said fudge it and just ran into the tunnel. The tunnel was extremely disorienting due to all of the flickering lights. It took me a few minutes, but I finally found the area where the girls had been lost. There was another staff member right behind me holding a flashlight, but it wasn't the guy who pretended that everything was okay. It was another guy. I wasn't sure that I could trust him, but I didn't have much of a choice. I asked him if there was a door nearby, and his answer was a yes. He led me toward the door, and when I opened it, there was a small room without a door, and I could also see a long corridor leading to an exit far ahead. So I ran into the room, and then through the corridor, I saw a staircase going down to the basement while I was running towards the exit. I thought about going to the basement first, but I took my chances with the exit. When I reached the exit and opened the door, there was nothing. It only led to one of the pathways at the amusement park. I quickly turned around and went to the staircase. All the while, the staff member was right behind me. I went downstairs and began opening every door I could find until I came across one that was locked. The staff member opened it with a key, and the girls, they were inside. They were unconscious, likely given some sort of sedative, but they were okay. The staff member radioed the park security, and as I was stepping out of the room where the girls were at, I made eye contact with another man who turned the corner at the far end of the corridor in the basement. It took a couple of seconds for both of us to react, but we basically ran at the same time. The man ran away from me, and I ran towards him. As I was giving chase, I heard the staff member follow a bit behind as they radioed the park security to tell them where we were headed to and that we were chasing after the suspect. Not long after, we took another staircase and reached the ground level. I continued to give chase, the staff member continued to update the security, then I saw multiple security guards from different directions converge on the suspect. In less than a minute, the suspect was under a pile of very angry men, including me. The security caught 3 additional suspects on that day. One of the suspects was the staff member who lied to me about the pod in front of mine being empty. As it turned out, the staff member and 3 of his friends were planning to abduct young girls from the park. The buyers were already lined up as well. That part was discovered by the police. In the end, I was personally thanked by a local politician and as well as the head honcho of the police. I got requests to do interviews and some outlets wanted to take my photos, but I declined them all. I was just happy that the girls were safe and didn't care much about my 15 minutes of fame. Looking back, I think I was able to act brave and proactive because my sister was there. Right after I saw those girls disappear in the tunnel, all I could think of was the safety of my sister. However, once I established that my sister was safe and sound, then those 2 girls became my sisters. They became my responsibility. I know for certain that I couldn't have felt as connected to those girls if not for my sister being present right there and then. I got to meet the girls a few days later because they wanted to thank me. But again, much of what happened was thanks to my sister being there and their presence alone prompting me to act braver than usual. And yeah, I ended up staying at my sister's for a few days longer. The police wanted me there for a while, and the families of the girls reached out to me through the police as well. They wanted to treat me for dinner, and so I obliged. At the end of it all, everyone was safe, we were all happy, I went back home, and life's gone back to being normal and boring again, just the way I like it.